Hi, I'm Jason Gore for ThatShelf.com, and we're here to look at the Vancouver International Film Festival world premiering film Clan of the Painted Lady.
Shelf.
So, Clan of the Painted Lady, directed by Jennifer Chu, is a really fascinating story. Came out of the Northern Lights section of VIFF. It's one of the documentaries that I sort of am on the hunt for, as it were, not only as a lover of documentary, but obviously somebody who is now graced with being able to program film festivals. If the timing works out, this is something I'd absolutely love to show to a wider audience. It's ostensibly the story of identity. It's the story of a woman exploring her own Hakka heritage. Now, Hakka, if you're in Toronto, Hakka is very, very famous because there's a huge community here of a particular sort of, let's say, a subset of the greater South Asian Chinese community. And it's a fascinating mix of different cultures. So it's itself a culture that has taken on certain elements of the various places that the Hakka people have sort of traveled. They are sort of slightly nomadic, pushed out of different environments, and then go and flourish in other environments, particularly in other areas of South Asia, such as India, but also in the Caribbean. And they have brought not only their culture to those places, but obviously managed to sort of reshape something that's sort of so fundamental to a greater Chinese culture, which is the culinary culture. Food is such an incredibly and an integral part, and it's, for me, just absolutely glorious to see how their food has been shaped by the various places that they are. Not dissimilar to other countries from the region that take food as seriously as they do. So between food, music, dance, and all those other elements, she sort of explores about what that connection is. And obviously, there's a real strong sense of the specificity of a cultural examination, what she's actually driving at to understand her own background and her own sort of complex relationship about expectations of what it is to be Hakka, about what it is in 2025 to be navigating these various pressures, about a connection to a country like India where they were outsiders forced to sort of the outside communities and taking on jobs that the actual local populace found distasteful or against their particular religion. And obviously, as a Jew, this speaks very much to my own cultural history. Very much an outsider culture, one that was pushed away, one that was in some ways forced into specific jobs and specific things to do that the predominant culture wasn't necessarily responsive to. For God's sakes, look at the entirety of The Merchant of Venice. This is an ancient story that rhymes. And in a funny way, I really responded in this particularly and specifically Hakka stories. Not as if I'm watching this and thinking, how is this my story? But it's more that something that films do, I think, beautifully, which is to tell something incredibly specifically, but find in that specificity a universality that anybody can actually see. Their own stories, be they migratory, be they non-migratory, be they cultural elements that are held onto, be they the way that the family dynamic works. I mean, from what I understand, Gorber itself means tanner. So I again find myself both absolutely intrigued in this specific story, but also seeing inadvertent echoes to inevitably one of my own unheralded stories. Not unheralded, yes, it's definitely unheralded, but unknowable stories, because so many of if you go back far enough, specifically in my culture, you end up with dead ends, obviously, because of specific travails, etc. So it is fascinating to see how all these elements sort of come together in this film. And again, what I love at it is not just a blind celebration, nor is it an excoriation. It is a true investigation with all of its elements. Now, as a documentary, it does sort of lean slightly into the overly poetic at times. The central metaphor of the butterflies being the migratory animal is something that I think might be slightly overused, but nonetheless, it is a beautiful metaphor. Is the notion of obviously the chrysalis unfolding in a specific area, but a creature that then goes off on this massive migration while still maintaining its own formal beauty. I get it. I just think that at some point in time, it slightly overstays its welcome, and that's because I think the filmmaker sort of maybe should have recognized the power of what she already had. We didn't necessarily need these asides, these sort of visual flourishes. Sort of a taste of them, I think, is there, but I think sort of reduced slightly because the story is so compelling. The characters, including herself, but especially the dynamic between her parents, between her cousins, and the various places that she goes are so wonderful and so engaging. We don't need this other element. Yes, it gives the film its sort of more florid title, but I think on a fundamental basis, this is such a beautiful and strong examination of this particular story, of a filmmaker's story that never feels insular. It never feels like we're just taking for granted the stuff that she's interested in. I really, really think this is a strong and powerful film, and absolutely, for me, one of the great discoveries of this year's Vancouver International Film Festival. Congratulations to all involved. I think the film is absolutely terrific. For ThatShelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe, follow us on social media. Let me know in the comments if you had a chance to see this film, and we'll see you next video. All the best. Take care.